Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 5 of SLA, Second Language Acquisition, and we are going to present about our major that's about age. Talking about how important age in second language acquisition. Okay, for the first, we are going to talk about the relationship between age and second language acquisition first. In general, children are able to acquire and master their first language by the age of 4 to 6 years. However, there are differences in the acquisition of a second language. People start learning second language at various ages. Thus, age emerges as the location of the remarkable difference between second language and first language acquisitions. The relationship between age and second language acquisition has been a central goal since the inception of the field of SLA. Two issues are hotly debated. One pertains to the possibility that a biological schedule may operate, after which the process and outcomes of second language acquisition are fundamentally and irreversible change. The outcome of second language acquisition among adults is demonstrably different in many respects from the outcome of first language acquisition among children. Age of acquisition is understood as the age at which learners are immersed in the second language context, typically as immigrants. This landmark is distinct from age of first exposure, which can occur in a formal schooling environment. Visit to the second language country, extended contact with relatives who are second language speakers, and so forth. And the next one is about critical and sensitive periods for the acquisition of human language. In language acquisition, there is the idea that there may be an optimal best age period or maybe even critical age period. This idea emerged in neurolinguistic research of SLA by Penfield and Roberts in 1959 and Landberg in 1967. The authors of this study provide neurolinguistic data that support the statement that there is a natural tendency in children's brains to learn a first language. In addition, the other studies reveal that children are also more proficient learners of foreign language than adults. This is caused by the loss of plasticity by the human brain during adulthood. A critical period is established for some phenomena of animal behavior as well as the development of certain abilities in humans, such as vision. The hypothesis is that there is a certain period of time early in life when the human brain shows a special tendency to pay attention to certain experiences in the environment, for example, language, and learn from them. In fact, the brain is pre-programmed to be shaped by experience, but only if it occurs over a biologically determined period of time. In much of the second language acquisition literature, the terms critical period and sensitive period are considered synonyms. This may be because the available evidence regarding the acquisition of additional languages is too early for second language acquisition researchers to make a better distinction between the two ideas. This is an example of critical period in animal learning. This example is ocular representation in the cortex of kittens. This neurological process develops according to a narrow window of opportunity between 30 and 80 days of life. If kittens are deprived from the experience of viewing during this time window because one eye is forced to remain closed, they will lose vision simply because the closed eye and the brain fail to connect, as it were. That is, even though the now unconverted eye is optically normal, it fails to convey the visual information to the axons in the thalamus, which in turn cannot convey it to the neurons in cortical level 5. More example of a sensitive period-based phenomena in animal behavior. It's talking about owls. Young owls develop the ability to create mental maps or their space based on auditory cues at a young age. If either hearing or vision is impaired during this sensitive period, auditory spatial information will not be processed normally later in life. And the last point from me about Julie and Julie. That is the name of someone, Julie, maybe to pronounce. I don't know to pronounce. Julie, an exceptionally successful late second language learner of Arabic. Striking second language acquisition evidence bearing on the sensitive period hypothesis for second language acquisition. Julie was an first language speaker of British English who moved in Cairo due to her marriage at 21. Julie couldn't read and write Egyptian Arabic, but she learned it naturally from environment. Julie had been living in Egypt for 26 years in order to test whether her accent was truly indistinguishable from that of a native speaker. The researchers mixed Julie's recorded explanation of her favorite recipe with recordings of the same oral task by another 6 native and advanced non-native speakers of Arabic. And then, are children or adults better second language learners? This is questions of Reed. This is a common question, especially in second language learning, that often asked by many people. From the question, some researchers of second language acquisition try to find the answer out. In 1970 century, some SLA researchers tried to compare children and adults' second language learning rate in second language environment, and the findings show that the adults have more advantages than children. And best Catherine Snow and Marian Hoefnagel-Höhle in 1977 conducted a study of this case in Netherlands and found that adults and adolescents were better than children in terms because they could learn in a 25 minutes instruction session or up to a year of naturalistic exposure to second language Dutch. Although the advantage of the older learners began diminishing after 10 months or so, the findings were surprising because they flatly contradicted assumed critical period effects. While in Stephen Krashen research, Michael Long and Robin Scarcella in 1979 In an article, draw a conclusion of these findings. They conclude, based on a review of 23 studies of second language learning in second language context, that older is better initially, but that younger is better in the long run. The 18 studies pointed that adult learners and older children learned at a faster pace than younger children. This because adults may be able to use cognitive and metacognitive abilities and strategies to learn many aspects of the second language initially faster. 5 long-term studies conducted in Harvard University also revealed that when achievements in the second language were compared after at least 5 years of residence in the second language environment, then young starters were clearly better than adult starters. And based in the context of English learned in Cataluña, in 2006, when early starters studying English from the age of 8 to 16 were compared to late starters studying English from the age of 11 to 17, the late starters actually maintained an advantage that persists well after 5 years of instruction. This is not surprising if we remember that the same time length of 5 years entails an intensity and quality of exposure to the second language that can be radically different in foreign versus second language learning contexts. Age may insist universal influences on the learning of a second language, but context guides these universal effects and needs to be considered carefully. That's all for my explanation.
Age and second language morphosyntax. Question of ultimate attainment. Are age and morphosyntactic attainment systematically related? Contemporary SLA researchers take a long-term view on ultimate attainment and to evaluate the end state of second language acquisition by focusing on the area of second language morphosyntax. Ultimate attainment is usually measured by comparing second language learners' responses on grammaticality judgment tasks along differing arrival ages and against a native speaker baseline. The accumulated findings suggest that learners who begin acquiring the second language before a certain age, which these studies locate to be around puberty, will tend to exhibit intuition that are very close to those of native speakers of that language. In contrast, the late learners' intuition are not likely to be in the native speaker range, and this holds true regardless of the number of years, since they arrive in the second language environment past puberty. Simply put, whether a critical period for second language learning really exists will not go away as long as studies continue to show that there is no sharp drop in grammatical intuition after some supposedly critical age, and as long as cases of exceptional successful late learners are discovered against the backdrop of the overwhelming tendency for early starters to succeed and for late starters to fail. Evidence on second language morphosyntax from cognitive neuroscience. Knowledge about how the brain, especially the cognitive neuroscience, handles language is highly relevant to any discussion of critical periods for second language learning. Some researchers have shown that localization of language function in the brain is less lateralized in late bilinguals. More right hemisphere activation is observed than in early bilingual and monolinguals. Such age-related differences disappear when brain activation is inspected during the processing of second language semantic stimuli, those bilinguals who were exposed first to the second language after year 7 processed closed class words. For example, function words like with, the, some, differently from the early bilinguals and the monolinguals control. Whereas open class words, for example, content words like no, store, glad, yielded no major differences in brain activation pattern across groups. Thus, the neuroscience findings, although fascinating, should not be interpreted hastily because at this early stage of our knowledge about brain and language, it is difficult to evaluate what they mean for critical period discussion. As Marino Fatot pointed out, given what we know about the plasticity of the brain, any age-related differences in brain location and neural activity pattern may be as much as a result of the brain's architecture shaping how subsequent linguistic experience is processed and used for second language learning, as it could be the result of the brain having been shaped by previous experience. Evidence in favor of a critical period explanation will come only when neuroscientists can establish beyond doubt that the former and not the latter is actually the case. Second language, phonology, and age. Unlike subtle morphosyntactic knowledge, which may be difficult to evaluate outside the laboratory, foreign accents are so conspicuous that they can often be detected by the untrained ear. Scoffle stated that non-native speaking samples were consistently and accurately detected by native speaker judges. The foreign-sounding accents are likely to develop when the second language is first learned later in life. Fledge proposes an explanation for the observed age-related phonology effects that is remarkably different from Scoffle. He stated phonetics categories of mental representation of speech sounds in the first language are stabilized by age 5 to 7. After that point, new phonetic contrast will be processed through such an first language filter, and hence it is more difficult, although not biologically impossible, to detect and produce the second language categories that are not salient. Ironically, then the foreign accent may arise not because one has lost the ability to learn to pronounce, but because one has learned to pronounce the first language so well. Fledge puts the explanatory emphasis on psychoperceptual and phonetic causes related to previous massive experience with the mother tongue. We have said that there is a clear evidence that accents are likely to develop when the second language is first learned later in life. This notwithstanding and paralleling the finding for the second language syntax, there is also evidence in second language phonology of exceptional post-pubertal learners whose accents are not recognized as foreign, even under close scrutiny in the laboratory. They had all received considerable amounts of high quality in second language instruction, and they all self-reported high levels of motivation and concern to sound native-like. In sum, in second language phonology as in second language morphosyntax, it is not possible, although it is admitted rare, to attain native-like levels. Indeed, it is remarkable that the feat has been attested with some exceptionally successful late second language learner for target languages as different as Arabic, Dutch, English, French, and German.
What caused the age effects, biological and other explanations. The exceptional students who begin studying L2 after puberty are often in their 20s and who perform within the control range of native speakers on grammatical intuition or are undetected as native speakers by several judges. It is possible to infer that age-related difference exists in how a skill or ability is learned, and to purpose explanations that don't use pre-programmed biological genes in the brain as the underlying cause. SLR research emphasizes sociocultural, educational, and motivational factors in relation to the effects of age on L2 learning. They argue that the socio-educational and motivational forces are very different in the lives of adolescents and adults when compared to the life of children. Difference in language attainment can be expected, but they may be a consequence of experience and socialization and not biological or in nature cannot be overcome. Other SLR research such as Hellstam and Abrahamson argue that the sensitive period is real. In their view, there is an incomprehensible but biologically determined impossibility after a certain age to continue to use the implicit learning process that are most appropriate for natural language learning during the years of human life. Other opinion from Lenneports, the early progenitor of the critical period hypothesis, proposed that if we look at the behavior from a biological point of view, we should be surprised if not we didn't find critical periods. A possible reason for the deterioration of these biological factors could be that the brain loses plasticity as individual age. Myelination has frequently been offered as an explanation for the brain losing its plasticity. A good explanation of myelination is a physical chemical process in the brain in which glial cells rob the axon of the neurons with myelin, a substance contained in the glial cells that consists of lipids and proteins. Rubbing the axons with myelin gives the neurons nutrition and increases their ability to conduct signals, thus making it so that information can be transferred quickly across large distance. A bilingual turn in second language acquisition thinking about age. The second language acquisition findings and relates explanation for the effects of age in auto learning yield biological explanation that are around age 6 for phonology and possibly Catalan exposure at age 4 or earlier, but not around puberty or until age 15 for morphosyntax. If the age effects thus occur from the age of 2 or 4, the old assumption that starting early guarantees a complete and successful L2 acquisition loses much of its strength. Effects of age to the first years of life also obscure the traditional difference between L2 and bilingual learners. Thus, a new range of theoretical and empirical arguments in second language acquisition may have to be considered in the future, and second language acquisition research may need to turn to bilingualism studies when reassessing the evidence. How important is age in L2 acquisition, and why does it matter? Children might have a slow start when acquiring L2. Older children and adults can have
The advantage of early L2 learning for speed over beginners, and that disadvantage can last for about 5 years in a second language environment and even longer in a foreign language setting. It can also help address misguided attempts direction. Keep in mind is that very successful learners like Julie and Laura exist, and they probably account for as much as 5% to 25% of best case scenario learning. And from this explanation, we conclude that the age is very important. Yes, important, but is influenced by many factors like biological, educational, and environments, and maybe the others. We think that it needs to be studying again to find the best results. The explanation is enough from us. We are so sorry for the mistakes. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.